Mayapur, because he was really the only one that knew what was going on, and he had to really oversee all the management there. So the Mayapur festival, of course, that was Prabhupada's arrangement so that devotees could come to the Dham and associate with the Dham, and they could also associate with other devotees from around the world, and that would increase their enthusiasm, and that was his plan for the Mayapur festival. So from really 1974 onwards, the Mayapur festival started becoming a big international event. In 1972 they had the groundbreaking, but there was a mud hut. That was it. That was the world headquarters of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, a little mud hut. And Prabhupada immediately came out with a plan to build a 100-foot high pyramid-shaped temple, and there was going to be 4 guest houses at the back of the property. So he told the devotees, you build the guest house first, then we'll build, the temple. So the first guest house that got built was the Lotus building. And as soon as that was nearly ready, in May 1973, Prabhupada had been there. He'd been very sick, actually, for some time. And then he saw that now the building's getting nearly completed, so now he could offer some facility for the devotees from around the world to come and stay in the Dham. And that had been one of his plans for many, many years. In 1967, you'll see when Prabhupada left America after his heart attack and spent 6 months back in India, one of the things that he was doing was looking for land in Vrindavan, as well as getting, his health fixed up. But he was looking for land in Vrindavan, and he was looking for land in Mayapur. And he actually went with the Chutananda to Navadvip in late 1967, and they were looking for land. And Prabhupada's idea was that he was going to build what he called an American house. In other words, a place for his foreign disciples where they could come, live in the Dham, and then study Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and get deeply into the philosophy and practices. So he was very keen to do something in the Dhams, and in 1973, and we got the land in 72, in Mayapur, now this building was coming up, so Prabhupada sent a letter out that all of the temple presidents and as many devotees as they could bring should come to Mayapur every year for the festival, and they should observe Gaura there. So the next year in 74, then large groups of devotees started coming in from, Australia. I remember in Australia, I think about 20 or so at that first 74 festival that they went to. And then the festival began to grow each year. So 75 was much bigger, 76 was much bigger, about 500 or 600 devotees. And then in 77, again, that was the last time that Prabhupada was personally present there. So it's interesting that 77 festival, Calcutta Airport had just been upgraded. It was a very small airport. And then, of course, the jumbo jets came out, and there was nowhere for them to land. So Calcutta was off the map. They go to Delhi and Bombay, but no planes would come to Calcutta because they couldn't actually cater for them. So they had to upgrade the whole thing if they wanted to get tourists come in. So they did the upgrade in 76, and the first plane, the first jumbo jet to fly into Calcutta was going to be in February of 1977. And it was advertised. So Rameshwar and the devotees in America, they all found out that this jumbo jet is originating from America, and it's going through Europe, and then it's going to land in Calcutta just before the Gaura festival. So they booked all the seats. At least 350 devotees got on that plane, and they flew over. They picked more devotees up in Europe. It was all coordinated. And then when they landed in Calcutta, the plane taxis into the terminal building and stops. The plane, the steps go up. There's the chief minister, there's the minister of tourism, there's all the TV and radio and everything, big thing. And the door opens, and then 350 devotees come, piling down the stairway. They're all in ecstasy, dancing and chanting and everything. It was a big scene. So it was a bit of a PR coup for us. Anyway, so they all came to Mayapur, and Rameshwara was with them. So he had some concerns. He was the BBT trustee. At that point, the BBT was really peaking. I mean, they were selling millions of books, millions of dollars were coming in. And Rameshwara was the one, that was doing most of the work on that. So he was a bit concerned. And he came to see Prabhupada, and he expressed his doubts about, the size of the festival. And he was telling Prabhupada that actually, this is costing us a lot of money and a lot of books. And he explained that 350 devotees, that's $1,000 each for the tickets, that's $350,000 right there. And they're away for at least 5 or 6 weeks. So during the period when they're away, because most of the devotees were Sankirtan devotees, then all the book distribution was stopped. The temples were on a kind of a maintenance mode. No books were going out during that, nearly 2-month period. And no money was coming in either. So the BBT was having to reschedule the printing of some new books because there was this gap in the cash flow, from the couple of months that the devotees were in India. So like this, he was explaining to Prabhupada, this is costing the temples a lot of money, it's costing the BBT a lot of money. Even when the devotees return to America, it takes them a couple of weeks to get, their bearings back again and get back out to do their Sankirtan activities. So he calculated that the whole festival was costing about $750,000. Huge amount of money. That was in those days. So he had a suggestion, how to balance both requirements. So he made a suggestion, and Prabhupada was listening to him, and as he made each point, Prabhupada was saying yes, yes. So Rameshwara was feeling that, Prabhupada would surely back him. He'd definitely agree with him that we can't have a drop in book distribution, or we can't have a drop in the money that's going for printing, etc. So he presented his, reorganization. And he suggested that only 1/3 of a temple's devotees could come each year. So 1/3 one year, next third the next year, the last third the next year. So every 3 or 4 years somebody could come. And in that way then, at least some level of book distribution and collections would still be going on. So Prabhupada listened, and then he said no. He said as many men as possible should come every year to Mayapur and Vrindavan. That was his idea, because he knew the purifying effect of the Dham. Just coming there, associating with other devotees, you get a sense of ISKCON as a worldwide organization. Whereas when you're on, you're struggling in your own little temple somewhere, maybe in New Zealand or South America or wherever it was, you don't, have that connection with the rest of the world, so you feel a bit isolated. But you go to Mayapur, you go to Vrindavan, and you meet devotees from all over the place, and you get that, broader aspect coming in. And of course you're in the Dham. You're getting purified just by being there. So Prabhupada knew that. He knew the value of that. It was worth more than any kind of money. He wanted the devotees to come. They were working hard all year round, every day, going out in the street, taking big risks just to spread Krishna consciousness. So he wanted to give them a taste of nectar, basically. He wanted them to come. And, of course, in those days, the best thing about the Mayapur festival, apart from it being in Mayapur, was that Prabhupada was there. And we get to see Prabhupada for, 3 or 4 weeks. It was, really wonderful. You never got that opportunity in the West. You could go in every afternoon into his rooms, he would be having darshan, and especially the morning programs were really, really ecstatic. So this is just prior then to the 76th official beginning of the festival. So this is February the 28th, 1976. An increasing number of devotees are discovering the sweetness of evening darshans in Prabhupada's rooms. The devotees rarely have an opportunity to associate with him in such an informal and intimate setting. Prabhupada has been responding to their eagerness with some blissful recollections of his early days in America in 1965 and 1966, including all the difficulties that he went through. This evening he told us that when he came to America, he had not expected to remain very long, because his original visa was valid for only 2 months. But for a year he had continued to extend his stay, 2 months, 2 months, 2 months, and each time he was thinking to remain a little longer and give things a try. He would go to the shipping agency and inquire when the next ship was back to India was, but he would never go. Eventually the clerk, a friendly Indian man, asked him, "Swamiji, you're always asking, but actually when will you go?" And Prabhupada would laugh and tell him, "No, actually I don't want. But sometimes when I'm a little disappointed, I think about it." So as preaching opportunities started to unfold, he began paying a lawyer $150 a month to get his visa extended. Then eventually he took another man's advice and went to Montreal in Canada to apply for residence in America. After 3 months, he re-entered the country with his green card via Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Sabaldas had begun a center. Prabhupada went on to tell us about his life in New York on 2nd Avenue. He would stroll down the riverbank, unaware that the area was notoriously dangerous. Eventually somebody informed him that sometimes snipers were shooting pedestrians there at random. Prabhupada said, "I was innocent. I didn't know that they were killing people there." So it was fascinating to listen to him reminiscing about the early days of his mission. Never self-laudatory, always humble about his success, Prabhupada captivates his audience with his unique and remarkable character. He has a combination of youthful simplicity coupled with an astonishingly deep perceptiveness of human nature and life in general. He attributes everything to Lord Krishna's special mercy rather than to any expertise of his own. This selfless quality makes him irresistibly attractive and an ideal teacher and our most trustworthy friend. So that was late February. So every night this was building up. Prabhupada was, having this darshan in his rooms, as many people could cram in there, and on the corridors everybody's listening. It was nectar. And in Mayapur it's especially nice because the power would always go off. And so, when the electricity kept going off, we would light these lanterns, kerosene lamps with the glass, bulbs. We put them in Prabhupada's room, so there'd be this nice, soft glow there around Prabhupada. Everybody would be sitting there listening to him talking about the early days in New York, or earlier than that, in the 1950s when he was preaching in Jhansi. The breeze would be because he had a door on either side of his room, so he'd open the doors and the windows and the nice breeze would blow through. Sometimes you get these kalmashaks, these big cyclonic storms. Has anybody been in Mayapur when we've had a cyclone? A couple. I mean, when it blows, it really blows. You feel like the whole building's going to get blown over. So, you get like 2 minutes warning. There'll be flashes of lightning in the sky, and then you start seeing the wind starting to stir, and then it will start whipping up, and you had about a minute to run around and close all the windows and doors and get inside, and then wow, this cyclone would roar through. And it was nice. We'd be talking with Prabhupada, all of a sudden we'd have to jump up and close everything up, light the lanterns, and then sit there in the room. It's blowing like anything outside. And Prabhupada's, chit-chatting about his previous preaching attempts, etc. So it was very sweet. So anyway, every night that was going on, and every morning, of course, Prabhupada was doing the program. He would walk either on the roof, or he would walk around the grounds. Then he would come in. At that time, of course, we had Chota, Radha Madhav, no big deities, and they were on the ground floor of the Lotus building. And then at the other end was Prabhupada's Vyasa. And then he would give it, he would receive Guru Puja, he would give his class, and then go back up to his rooms. So March the 11th, 1976, Mayapur, this is the official beginning of the festival. Just before the class started, Prabhupada gave the hundreds of assembled devotees his personal welcome. His simple, heartfelt message, expressing his appreciation for their attendance here in Mayapur, was greeted with large smiles and cheers. He said, first of all, we must welcome all the devotees. There may be so many inconveniences, but please do not mind it. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's place, so be joyful always. Thank you. So Prabhupada's, thanking the devotees for coming. At that time, we just started work on the long building. The foundations were in by the festival time. And there was the front wall, a few rooms on there, and then there was the Lotus building. So it was quite, cramped up. And the toilets were just holes in the ground. And of course, everybody that came to India in those days immediately got dysentery. That was the first thing that you got because of the food or whatever. So it was a bit austere, and Prabhupada was aware of that. But he didn't, mind. He thought, the benefits of being in Mayapur across far outweigh anything else. So his thoughtfulness immeasurably deepened everybody's affection and gratitude to him. Without Srila Prabhupada, none of us would be here, and none of us would have even heard of Mayapur, or Krishna consciousness, or tasted the happiness of spiritual life. So his humble concern about the lack of amenities was all the more endearing. As he had told us earlier on his walk, it was out of concern for the devotees that he had built a guest house first, even before a temple. Some of the locals have criticized him for it, but Prabhupada told us that where there are the devotees, then God will come. Krishna is not a dull stone. He is drawn by the affection of his devotees. Therefore, making a place for God without any facilities for his devotees is merely idol worship. So they were criticizing, you're building a nice place for yourself, Bhagavan has to stay underneath. But that was Prabhupada's reply, no, you build a place for the devotees, that's the higher principle. Krishna will automatically be attracted to any place where the devotees are meeting and glorifying him. So that was at the official start of the festival, March the 14th, then a couple of days later. Down in the temple room during his discourse, Prabhupada told us about bhava, or ecstasy. He said, at the present moment, we've got a bhava. I am this, I am that, I belong to this family, I belong to this nation. So bhava is ecstasy, and everybody is overwhelmed with such kinds of ecstasy. The politicians, they think that we devotees are simply wasting our time in chanting and dancing. They have no sense how to improve the position of the country. So they do not like it because they're in a different bhava. But we are trying to change the bhava. That bhava must be there. The whole Krishna consciousness movement is just to purify the bhava. And that is stated here, Parishuddha Bhavaha. We're not negating everything. We're simply changing from material bhava to spiritual bhava. That's all. So here is a building, means the Lotus building. But there are many hundreds and thousands of big buildings in this district or in this country. But here, the bhava has changed. In your country, there are many big skyscraper buildings. In comparison to those buildings, this is absolutely nothing. But still you have come here, spending thousands of dollars to change the bhava. That is required. Otherwise, you American boys and girls, you have no business to come here and see this big building. No. But to change the bhava, that is required, and that is a very important thing. Getting down from his Vyasasana, the devotees crowded around, and Prabhupada embarked on his daily circuit of the temple room. So this became a Mayapur tradition. Pritaputra Swami struck up a loud kirtan, and Prabhupada began to exhibit his own bhava, dancing up and down the whole time. The devotees were wild with delight as he rang the bells hanging down on either side of the temple room, strongly pulling on the ropes for prolonged spells, encouraging the devotees to chant and dance with increasing enthusiasm and smiling all the while. So that was became the routine after class. Prabhupada would walk down to the other end where the deities were, and because it was a small deity room, and on either side there was a bell hanging from the ceiling, and Prabhupada would go, he would start pulling on the bell, and all the devotees would start dancing and jumping up and down. Then he would walk around, and then he would stop at the other bell on the other side, and then he would pull that one. And then everybody would jump up and down even more. And then he would go across the front of the deities, do a little pirouette, like a 360-degree, what do you call it, circumambulation on the spot. And then he'd go over to the first bell again and start ringing that one. So by the time you got around 3 times, everybody was bouncing off the ceiling. I mean, it was, you know, ecstatic. So after his 3rd circuit, he came before their lordships and began to dance. Hundreds of devotees converged around him, leaping with excitement as he put first one hand in the air, and then, handing his cane to Madhavisa Swami, he raised the other. With both arms extended and a huge smile on his face, he urged the ecstatic crowd to greater and greater heights of spiritual abandon, as he also jumped up and down ecstatically. It was a personal demonstration of what Lord Chaitanya's festival is really all about. Purification through association. Visiting the Dham is wonderful, but seeing and being with Srila Prabhupada is the concentrated essence. What time did we go to?
1:45.
Quarter. Oh, we've just gone up a little bit. Alright, now just to put a cap on that one. One last little anecdote from the same festival, that was in Mayapur. Then from Mayapur we went to the other side of the country, where there was about a week's gap for the devotees to do their travel and shopping and everything else. And then we went to Vrindavan. So from I think the 1st of April through to the 10th, then we had a second festival in Vrindavan. Nowadays it's not so, you know, emphasized, the Mayapur Vrindavan festival. We either go to Mayapur or, you know, now Vrindavan's become more popular in Kartik. In those days, Vrindavan Mayapur was a combined festival, and it was by Prabhupada's intention. So we'd gone over, Prabhupada was lecturing every morning, and then on April the 10th then it was the final, I think the final day of the official festival. So all the devotees are visibly surcharged from their association with Srila Prabhupada during the last few weeks. Now they'll be returning to their respective temples to push on the Sankirtan movement. As Prabhupada has stated many times, his idea is to bring as many devotees as possible to the Mayapur Vrindavan Gaura festival. He knows that they'll all become purified by contact with the Dhams, and thus return fully enthused with spiritual potency to preach for another year. Of course, it is Prabhupada's association that is the chief motivating principle. We may not know Krishna, but Prabhupada is in our midst, and it is due to the strong reciprocal loving relationship with him that the devotees are working so hard year after year. So that was the pinnacle of our association with Prabhupada. In 1977, Prabhupada got sick right at the very beginning of the festival and he wasn't able to attend. So although he was there in his rooms, there was no real chance for the devotees to get that more intimate association through darshan and from the classes. And then of course after that, Prabhupada left. But you can still experience the same thing. The Dham is the Dham. Prabhupada's still present there. As he said, that's his place of worship in Mayapur, and his home is in Vrindavan. So if we go there, if you're a little bit dry, then the spark will come and you'll get the flame. But if we're a bit wet, then let's see how long it takes. Okay, so that's something today on association. We've run out of time. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I just want to comment one little thing about Vishnu Swami, which I heard the other day. Once he told me that he knows one expert astrologist who found Vishnu Swami again back in Russia as a brahmachari. I don't know, but I can't even remember who it was, but I was quite puzzled. And he said, no, it's true. And apparently that boy also has some memories, but he just keeps really quiet and doesn't talk about it. But that person who told me he's convinced that yes, Vishnu Swami, I don't know if it's the heavenly planets there. But then, anyway, I simply wanted to share that.
Well, that's an interesting punchline to that story. It's a possibility, you know, that he came back and continued with Prabhupada's preaching mission. And that was his nature. He was, you know, he wasn't a showy person. He was a very, you know, not introverted, but quiet, very sober kind of person. It's definitely possible. Who knows? Prabhupada told me that an astrologer once told him that in his previous life he had been a medical doctor, and that in his lifetime he had never committed any sin. But one time he had to kill a snake to get the venom for treating a patient, but he said that's not considered sinful. So then I was immediately, this happened, I just went into Prabhupada's room for something or other. Prabhupada was just sitting there chanting with himself, and then he just suddenly told me this. There was no trigger for it or anything, he just said, an astrologer told me this. And he told me the story, so I'm sitting there trying to think now who that could be. You know, maybe he's an associate of Lord Chaitanya, Murari Gupta was a doctor, maybe he's, you know, that's Murari Gupta come back or something. So I didn't want to ask Prabhupada, you know, face to face, well, who were you? So I tried to do it in a kind of a roundabout way. So I asked, well, when would that have been? Like his last lifetime. So then Prabhupada just said, well, you know, human life 100 years, so you just make the calculation 100 years ago. And that was it. Then he, you know, changed the subject. So even Prabhupada had been told by an astrologer about a previous life. Yeah, it's a possibility. And of course there was the famous quote, Prabhupada was, I think here in Sweden, in connection with Sweden, the former Prime Minister of India, an astrologer had calculated that after being the Prime Minister here, there was a man in Sweden with 2 dogs, and now he's one of those dogs. Because Prabhupada didn't attach any, you know, absolute, you know, value to statements like that. It's just, it's kind of interesting news. Prabhupada did, you know, he did go to astrologers now and again, and he did quote, you know, some incidences. Like when he was born, apparently some famous astrologer had calculated his chart and made that prediction that after the age of 70, he would be going overseas and he would have 108 temples. So that was a prediction that came true. So astrology is a bona fide science, but I would fall short of saying, you know, all right, you were so-and-so in your last life, and, you know, now you've got this life. Whether it was Vishnu Swami in your last life, now you've got this life, you're still here, now your business is the same, get out. That's, you know. Anyway, interesting piece of information, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Just a quick comment that Prabhupada's quarters are very nicely maintained there. I'm encouraging to camp Japa and be part of that, what happened there.
Yes.
I personally find a lot of inspiration. And it's just, you know, they're there for the devotees to also take shelter of the quarters.
Yes. Actually, in Mayapur, for some reason or another, not so many devotees know about Prabhupada's rooms.
Yeah.
You know, devotees come there, but they don't think about going up into the Lotus building and being there. But it's really, as you say, it's really serene. I mean, you get in there, you can really feel Prabhupada's sitting there with you, you know. In Vrindavan, you know, Prabhupada's quarters, of course, are very prominent. In Mayapur, not so.
I don't think they go to the area to go. I think it's like closed area. Because it's nobody.
Yeah, you very rarely see anybody there. It's a really, if you're in Mayapur, anybody when you go, if you want a good